All right, so we're live, and it's Tuesday. I'm sorry, Tuesday. Whew, time flies for me. Actually, it is Wednesday, November 6th at 2 p.m. in the afternoon in Texas. I am not in Texas today, believe it or not. I'm in Mumbai, so I'm a little ahead of you guys. But we're going to have a fun time with a great guest that we have today. And there's certainly a lot going on. I am sure John Butler is going to talk about the election, as many other things. It's interesting times we live in. Uh, and obviously, we will be focused on mobility and hopefully a lot of smart mobility. But before we start today, let's ask our John Sibley Butler for some music.
While we slumber, America, land of brave and true. There's castles and houses and clothing for all, and all belong to you. Everyone a king, for you can be a millionaire. If there's something belonging to others, there's enough for all people to share. Whether sunny blue or in December too, or in the winter time or spring, there'll be place without end, every neighbor a friend, and every man a king.
Woo! All right,
How are
Johnny.
you doing? That was the campaign song for Huey Long, the
Uh-huh.
senator from Louisiana that ran for the presidency and was assassinated. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to today. I think that we have an interesting time with transportation and in the greater Austin area, and so I'm looking forward to our conversation. But tell me what's in your mind. I know that the high tech world continues to evolve very fast, and maybe I'm wondering if it's going to be impacted favorably or not by the recent results of the election.
Well, I was on the phone since 8 o'clock this morning about the election and what happened in the election, and I think that Vice President Harris put a lot of emphasis on the women's issues, like abortion and et cetera. And her return on that was just probably 0.8% in terms of the election. I don't think that she put enough on the economy or what was actually going on in the economy, and so it became more than the issues that they perceived it would be. It came down to the economy, and this was a complete sweep. If you look at Trump, even where Trump lost, he lost in a small by a small percentage in states that Biden actually carried, and and so I think that we have a new president now, and with a new president, we go forward. What would it mean? It means the following. It means that we have a new president, and everybody gets behind the new president, and we go forward. But it also brings back to focus, Andreas, the importance of the economy. I think this election got away from the importance of the economy, but when you look at the data, it was about the economy. It's also about the whole idea that there was a big spread between the haves and the have-nots. If you look at even Detroit, I mean, he carried Michigan, he carried the union states, right? I mean, he carried the unions in America. And so I think that's very interesting. So we go forward. This is America, and we want to have a peaceful transition. And we go forward in terms of what it means for the infrastructure. I think we will continue with the infrastructure in Texas and other parts of the world. I think we will continue with the importance of technology and electrification of the world. I think our biggest challenge, as you know, is to have enough electricity, right, to provide with all of the electrification we're going to do. And I think a lot of people, because of the election, they are really in shock. And sometimes to take a shock, to shock people back to what's important to Americans. and that is the elections. I think, as I said, I think that I think that the Democrats put too much emphasis on things that people didn't care about, and I think the Republicans put an emphasis on things that that people cared about, which comes back down to the economy. And so I think that was very interesting. Now, I say that in the whole sense that I think the economy is doing pretty good. I don't think the vice president took advantage of what's been happening in the economy for the last 4 years. She didn't want to ride on Biden's, back. She wanted to be her own person. But the election is over. God bless America. Let's move forward.
Gotcha. Well, I'm wondering if Sharmila is there. She is. She wants to be apolitical, which I don't blame her. And before we get rolling and introduce you guys to her, I just want to do justice to her role and background. So Sharmila Mukherjee is the Chief Strategic Planning and Development Officer at CapMetro. And she'll probably explain way better than I can what CapMetro is, but CapMetro is planning mobility authority for transportation, mass transit in Central Texas. Not sure really the boundaries. I think it's a little bigger than just the city of Austin, but she'll walk us through that. And so she's going to be with us for the hour. And CapMetro as a public transportation provider has an interesting view of the success of Austin, John Butler. And, Sharmila probably knows or not that Dr. John Butler was recently inducted into the Austin Technology Hall of Fame with Michael Dell and many others, including George Kosmetzky, as one of the architects of Austin and how Austin grew into what it is. And so, Johnny, I don't know that you ever met Sharmila, but it strikes me from our connection with her and her agreeing to join the program today that we're going to have a unique insight into what they're working on. So welcome, Sharmila, to the program. Are you there?
All right, I'm here. Thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure meeting you, John Butler, and I have heard of you. We may have met, but this is clearly an opportunity and an honor to be able to join this discussion and meet you again in this forum. So thank you for that. I'm Sharmila Mukherjee, and I am Chief Strategic Planning and Development Officer, Executive Vice President at CapMetro. We are a transit service provider, a transit agency in Central Texas. We are based in Austin, but we provide our transit service to surrounding communities that are opted in to our service area. And so our role is to provide a number of transit and mobility options, and we are in a unique place and time to be able to grow that service offering to meet the needs of the community. And I think you can't really talk about transportation and mobility without talking about what's happening in the region and who you are serving. We are very much in the front line of service. I wouldn't be here doing any kind of strategic planning and development if there weren't our operators and our vehicle mechanics that are working every day diligently to provide the service on the street. Ours is essentially, since I'm on the digital roundtable, I would say we're definitely the back end that are helping them get to where our service needs to go. So in that process, I would say it may be at some point worthwhile to pause and hear John's view on transportation and mobility in Central Texas. I'm sure that would give us a lot to talk about. I joined CapMetro 5 years ago as our community was getting ready to come to Project Connect to pass the referendum for system expansion. And right now we have bus, our fixed route bus, which is our MetroBus, and our rapid buses that are more frequent express buses, and then our MetroAccess that are commuter buses that go further. And then we have our commuter rail, which is Red Line, that serves Austin FC Stadium, the new the soccer stadium in Austin. And we also, in the last 5 years, have taken on a number of other ventures. Some are in the area of technology upgrades, some are in the area of building organizational capacity. And as we started to get ourselves ready for the system expansion that is Project Connect program of projects. There are multiple ways that we try to integrate our communities within the resources, the operational resources that we have. And those are microtransit, demand response. Demand response is basically when you would need services that would go along with your fixed route to pick somebody up in a more flexible way that would need more additional help from going point A to point B. And then to prepare for our eventual light rail project, which is being delivered by Austin Transit Partnership, an entity, a local government corporation that's been founded by City of Austin and CapMetro to specifically deliver the light rail portion of the project. Some of the highlights in recent times since passing of the referendum Prop A is that our ridership has come back up to a very respectable point. We are almost at between 85 to 87% of our pre-COVID ridership. And during major events, we exceed to 92. We are kind of range between 92 and 93% of our pre-COVID ridership. That's 2019. So we are doing well as a region. There's a lot of demand, and we are faced with a lot of operational resource challenges because operator resources and vehicle mechanics, we need to routinely keep momentum on hiring, recruiting, retaining them to be able to put the service on the road. But as an agency, we are very committed to expand our mobility options to get to where we need to be and expand the offerings that we have. In that spirit, we also have our Metro Bike program, the bike share program that's is managed. It's a joint operation between City of Austin and CapMetro, and it's being operated and maintained by Capital Metro. So that's where we are. I would pause there for any questions you may have.
Excellent, excellent. Johnny?
Yes, Sharmila, it's nice meeting you. Of course, I know you. Jeff Trevelyan is a dear friend, and I think he chairs the board. And yes. I don't think he would ever listen to me. So let me ask you the hard questions about Austin. I think what the interesting thing that we've had, and get your reaction to this, is a culture of movement in Austin. That is, we treated cars like horses. We wanted to get in our car and go where we want to go and park and walk into the building. And so I think that as the new ideas of transportation met that culture, a reality, that becomes what I call an unstructured problem. And the next question relates to the smartness of the development and the movement, whether it's smart cities, smart buses, smart bridges. So the first one is how do you see getting Austinites in the totality out of their horses, off their horses, their cars, and into public transportation? And the second question is how smart is the infrastructure developing for the future?
You do not ask any easy questions, but I would do my best to answer them. So the first question about how do we create a culture shift to get to shift more single occupancy vehicles like drivers to take public transportation. I think it's very layered. It's a layered issue, and a lot of it has to do with our current infrastructure and our behavioral patterns that we have, as we have grown to get accustomed with. Land use has a lot to do with it. If you ask me, that I would say that one of the basic ways that we could influence this decision is how we structure our land use. Land use and transportation go hand in hand. And I think land use planning has a lot to do with where we have reasonable density and reasonable critical mass to be able to provide public transportation in a way that is operable, that is allowed by resources are constrained to be able to provide good service. Good, reliable, and frequent service is essential for any kind of culture shift, behavioral shift, and transfer from one mode to another. So if we are talking about shifting our drivers to public transportation, I think the onus is on providing the service that would get them where they need to go, right? And conveniently and efficiently. And that requires resources. So one of our biggest challenges is resources and our funding structure. We get a 1 cent sales tax that comes into our, that's primarily constitute our operating revenue. And we have in the recent times have been successful in getting federal discretionary grants to support our overall program of projects, but we are still primarily reliant on sales tax. So with that funding structure remaining constant, and I think one of the biggest ways that we can make difference is probably creating a land use with conscious policy decisions that City of Austin has been very vigilant in the recent last couple of years with the land use changes and equitable transit-oriented development framework and the policy changes that passed that would help with the land uses that would support for better transit. We need to provide reliable, frequent service to be able to make any kind of culture shifts, and it takes time. Now, about smart cities, I really think one of the ways that we could create infrastructure that are better connected would be the way, it's very simple, you know this, and I'm actually talking to an audience that probably could teach me how smart infrastructure would work. But I would say if the infrastructure is connected, the connected and automated features would gradually come more into our area. And first and last mile solution is probably one of the most simple ways we can make better connections between destinations and our service. Because as you know very well, Mr. Butler, that our land use is very dispersed in many parts of the city. So it's not easy often to provide continuous transit service in a reliable, frequent way to make all of these destinations covered by our existing service. That would take a lot more resources. So we try to make smart decisions with use of technology and use a number of sort of scheduling and service planning programs to be able to optimize our resources and create a network that would best meet the needs so basically the greatest good out of the constrained dollars and resources we have. But one of the ways we can make these connections better is first and last mile solutions, and through our expansion of our e-bike, through our bike share program, through connected and automated infrastructures as they come in to be able to pilot and test them within our system as well.
Excellent question. Let me give you, let's combine that with some historical stuff that I find interesting. If we were to dig up the streets in Austin, Guadalupe Street, if we dig up Congress Avenue, we'll find railroad tracks everywhere because we had a trolley system at one time that connected the city. As we prepared, as Austin was expanding, and I want to talk about the geo structure of Austin. I'm going back to the early 80s and late 70s. It's such a beautiful city because we have caves underneath the city. So when we looked at doing subways, we ran into caves underneath the city. It was so pretty for to do Loop 360, and the reason why Loop 360 still has red lights on it is because we had an organization titled Save Our Springs. So you're right, every connectivity in Austin, because of the geography of how it is, the beauty and the lakes, and more importantly, the caves, right, are very interesting. But I can see that they are reinstalling a train line down Guadalupe by the University of Texas, which was there in the 1890s. It's still there. I'm serious. You know, I see that we're gonna do some trains, other kinds of trains, and of course, train tracks are all under Congress Avenue. They're all under 6th Street because we had a series of electric trolleys that connected everybody. So my question is, given the beauty of Austin and given the fact, have you run into the issue of caves underneath the system, the geography of Austin? Oh, you went upside down on me. Are you there?
I'm still here. I'm actually trying to figure out how my image got upside down, and it's definitely interesting, but I would like to fix it. And during this point, I will just turn my camera off as I fix it.
Okay.
So yes,
But
please
do you
continue on.
see any have Sharmila, have you run into the beauty of Austin and the caves underneath Austin and those kind of things as you try to connect Round Rock to Austin or Westlake to Austin or Great Hills to Austin in terms of trains, in terms of other kinds of systems, especially like other systems, other northern cities would have. And in Japan, they've got the best kind of trains. But I think that all of our train systems are above ground. And of course, as we do the big dig, as Boston did, right? I don't think Boston had to worry about all of the caves and all of the underground kind of water systems that we have in the great city of Austin. Have you run into that from your engineers?
So we have, I wouldn't make any broad comment about like overall level of environmental resources because it varies by the corridor, but Austin has sensitive natural resources and environmental resources that we are very closely familiar, and our engineering teams on a regular basis follows that and encounters that as part of our project. Most of our construction projects are also drainage projects. There's always a lot of drainage issues that we deal with. So we are well aware of that. As course of my work, I have not encountered directly, and I wasn't aware of the caves, but it's very interesting, and I'm not surprised to hear that there are environmental resources, sensitive environmental resources that are in the mix.
Okay. So one other last question, if you don't mind, Andres.
Yeah.
When we talk about a metro area now. We talk about Round Rock, right? We talk about San Marcos. We talk about San Antonio. We might even talk about as far as Waco. And if you look at the system of connectivity, and I'll just go into research from say northern cities, there's trains between Chicago and Milwaukee, trains between New York City and Maine. And as we grow in our collectivity through different cities, do you have to work with Round Rock? Do you have to work with San Marcos? Do you have to work with San Antonio? And as we get to a place where people will have a difficult time of living in the city of Austin because we are becoming Manhattan, it is so expensive, and taking public transportation to work, do you have any kind of connection with San Marcos? Do you have any connection with even as far as Temple or Fort Hood? Uh, are you having conversations with those people for the connectivity?
As part of the Austin to San Antonio Corridor Council that's reviewing rail options along the corridor, CapMetro is a participating agency in that discussion, and our government affairs teams are in regular communications with the communities, as you mentioned, San Marcos, and in between Austin and San Antonio corridors in regular discussions about their needs. We partner with CARTS, our rural transportation provider, to coordinate service along that corridor. And we also allow for just general planning activities that as our regional service providers that come in and they are able to transfer it at East Side Bus Plaza and other places where they could connect to our regular system. So we are doing our bit with the planning coordination piece, and also thinking through by taking part in the larger regional connectivity conversation.
All
Okay.
right. Well,
Okay.
let me jump in here and see if I can make it meaningful to some folks. And I don't know how many. Johnny, you and I need to go and stop at instead of getting in the car, a UT, we gotta get some passes and drive around. But Sharmila, I suspect that one of the biggest benefits of people coming into your infrastructure is having access to the internet and Wi-Fi services and all those things. And I suspect that that is one of the biggest focus on what I would call the customer experience.
Yes. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I think we are really focused on transparency and customer experience. Transparency specifically because we're a public agency funded through public dollars. So our CEO, Dottie Watkins, is very focused on having our agency's operational capabilities and performance metrics having sort of in a very transparent way. We monitor our resources as well as our present those information. So we have our Power BI based performance dashboard. On the user experience side, we are working with our new fare collection provider to provide the backend interface to update
Mhm.
all of our fare system and our onboard validators as well. So that is one of the ongoing effort. We are updating our enterprise application data systems, and many parts of our information security systems as well. So
Mhm.
I would say CapMetro is very much poised at this point to undertake a lot of these different aspects, both to improve our safety and security of our system as far as data is concerned, and also improve customer interface at the same time.
Sure, sure. So given that, Sharmila, maybe you can round the conversation with sharing some numbers on growth, passengers, so on. But I wonder how much of, a lot of the big words in people's minds is artificial intelligence, and obviously that means different things to a lot of folks. I wonder how much is artificial intelligence and products and technologies being thought of or used already at CapMetro, or what could you share of how that's helping or not our cost for better transportation?
That's a very interesting question. I would say that we are looking into machine learning and AI for where we can make simple process improvements through that. Our planning and development team, rather, we often use AI for simple things, for taking meeting notes, for validation, for kind of work assignments. When it comes to more sort of applying towards our customer-facing interface, we really think through specifically for in-house work. We are very mindful of who our audience is. A good percentage of our riders are of a certain income group. We want to make sure that we are able to provide opportunities that are and don't create digital barriers or economic barriers for use. So we're very mindful of all the federal requirements as well, including Title VI requirements that apply to any service upgrades or any improvements we use. So that is something that is front and center. We want to make sure that we have, as we upgrade our system, inadvertently, we don't create any barriers for use for some of our other users that may either be cash customers or not quite sort of experienced digital users, or may not even have a cell phone. I mean, the percentage of
Yeah.
that are very nominal, but we are required and very committed to make sure that it's equitable across all of our user base.
Right, right. So you mentioned a few things that are interesting. I used to run the power company, Austin Energy. I'm sure you're familiar with it, from 2003 to 2010, and the city grew quite a bit back then, but it's really blown those numbers significantly. And when I was at Austin Energy, I think that our our cash customer base that didn't have access to the internet to pay bills online or anything like that, and had to go to an HEB station, was roughly 6 to 7% of the population. And I wonder what that number is in you guys's approximately, if you have it at the top of your head. And then I wonder how if you could share how many riders, or what is, the Cap Metro area probably covers a population of some 2 million people or something like that. How many folks are using it? Certainly Johnny and I are not. Shame on us, Johnny. We need to do a better job of that. But I'm wondering how many folks are on the system every day, or how do you share that data with us?
I know, absolutely. I'm more than happy to also share after this, but I would say that we had pre-COVID, we had about 19% increase in our ridership in 2019, between 2019 and March of 2019 to 2020. And at that time, we were carrying over 1 million riders a day. And we are about 90% of that ridership. So we are doing really well. And our commuter service is slow to come back as people had gotten accustomed to working from home and being able to have more a flexible work schedule and spread throughout the day and week. It's almost hard to fully understand and replicate the commuter patterns that may come out of this changed conditions, but we are very mindful of that. So we are monitoring our commuter rail ridership. The 985 is one of the routes where we have commuter. It comes from Lakeline, Leander to downtown. And that also shows significant growth in ridership. We're monitoring those closely. And we also have recently contracted with a service provider that a consulting firm that is uniquely positioned in coming up with trip patterns model that captures cell phone data, as well as and kind of going beyond the traditional transportation data source that as a regional travel model by municipal planning organizations like Campo. So we are taking the traditional data and the non-traditional data sources and trying to blend them together to come up with travel patterns model that is useful and more suitable for current conditions to be able to predict travel patterns that are useful in our service planning. So that's where we are as a community. And as we continue to make progress in how we plan and how we put service out there, I think we would be happy to update on that. Our CEO, Dottie Watkins, is very focused and mindful in making sure that the services we provide to the community are what the community needs. So
great.
Well, let me
right-size the service.
So Johnny, real quick, they have a lot of data, Johnny. What are you waiting for?
Well, let me redeem myself a little bit. You're right. I have done public. I mean, I just gave a lecture at Rice on Saturday, and I went on Vaughn Lane bus, and it was better than any private plane I had ever been on. We got on Vaughn Lane, and they fed us from the time we left Austin to the time we arrived in Houston. And of course, it was a nice penny to go on Vaughn Lane. But my question is this. You talk about the equity and what you can do and can't do. And how do you get everybody like Andreas and myself on public transportation when it is being normed on people who don't have cell phones? So that what you have to really, really come to grips with is a business model, right, that enhances everybody, right, such that people would say, I really want to get on the public transportation because it is modern. It has all of the Wi-Fi. It has maybe even it has some snacks on it as I wake up in the morning. You know, in Japan, it's just absolutely awful. I was a professor in Tokyo for 14 summers, and I rode the public transportation all the time. But it was different. You know, it was very, very different. So my question is this: how do you balance what you call equity and the reality of the population of Austin, Texas, which is a pretty well-off population. How do you get them on the public transportation as you worry about someone who does not have a cell phone?
I think that's $1 million question. I think one of our biggest challenges is to make sure that as we continue to serve our core customer base and try to expand that customer base to include folks like you that have choices and mobility options, and that we want to be able to draw you in to be able to take public transit that's reliable, frequent, and comfortable. One of our biggest challenges is because our societal safety net is rather broken. So we have our unhoused populations on many of our routes. So it's not a transit created problem. It's not a problem created. It's not a situation that's we created, but we are doing our best to make sure that we are able to manage the needs of our existing customer, create a safe environment through with all sorts of operational resources that are putting into it, and then also make sure that we provide a higher level, high capacity transit options on certain corridors where there's enough ridership, projected ridership, to be able to bring in our customers with a lot of mobility choices to be able to draw in to our system. And I think one good example would be the new station on at McCalla, new McCalla station at the FC Stadium. It is a public-private partnership between CapMetro and Austin FC to create a station at the city's first professional sports stadium and in an inaugural stadium, to create a dedicated station that also serves the community and not just the sports stadium. So I think, and then there's a similar opportunity that is being very actively pursued and well in advance, although we're not quite at the point to start construction, is a Broadmoor station, which is at Uptown ATX in partnership with Brandywine. So I think one of our opportunities would be to, in our situation where we have funding constraints and no dedicated state funding to transit, one of the ways to advance that would be to bring in what Texas does really well, to create public-private partnership and opportunities of private partners to come in and create value, sort of a value proposition for transit. I think that's where we're going to be leaning towards more, where it makes sense.
Let me give an example of what I would like to do. You asked what my opinions were, and you mentioned the fact that you have peak times where we have more people in Austin, right? Whether it be South by Southwest or whatever have you. I want you to imagine with me the 1930s, before we were born, in the 1920s. And I want you to imagine with me a football game at the University of Texas. And I want you to imagine that people from Dallas and people from Houston are coming back to Austin on a special train that's geared for the well-to-do. They have all the drinks, all of the television, everything that they need. And Capital Metro is providing this service with 512 CMG Consulting. So we go to our alums in Houston, our alums in Dallas, our alums in Fort Worth and San Antonio, and said, when you come to Austin, Texas, you will be on a special train, as was done in the 1920s and 1930s. All of your needs will be met, and for all of the 5 games, it is a mere $20,000 fee for you to do this. But you can drink as much as you want to. You will be dropped off at the train station in Austin, Texas. And then you will be shuttled to the game by a Metro bus. And then we can make all the money that we need in 1 year from that kind of enterprise. What do you think about that? Public private partnership. Now you got to imagine now. You have to imagine with me. But to
I
imagine,
have
go
a
back to
great power.
1920.
I like to think as a strategic planner and a big picture thinker. I enjoy the imagination. I also feel you paint a great picture. I feel like one of our it would have been a lot easier, but there's no way to go back in the past and fix anything. But I would say that a lot of the cities that we point to in US for more high capacity transit, they were built 100 years ago or 80 years ago or 40 years ago. The newer systems are just more expensive. There are more environmental regulations. There are lots of requirements. It's just harder to build high capacity system within a city, across the city at this point in time. And but we have the advantage of technology. So there are other opportunities to sort of maximize public-private partnership and technology to sort of fill the gap.
You know, the rails are already there. So we just take some trains and paint them burnt orange and white. Or we do it in College Station. That's better, right? I mean, the rail is there. The trains are sitting in mothballs now. And we go back and we redo those trains like we do a private RV with everything. And then and we move on.
And who would be running it? Do you want this? So here's what happens.
Metro, a public-private relationship would run it. So it would be a partnership with, say 512 CMG and CapMetro, and we will provide all of the trains and bring the trains. The tracks are already there, remember, right? We just have Amway on them. This would be a special train, and Texas can do anything, and we can extend it to College Station. So in the 1920s and the 1930s, the Aggies arrived in College Station by train. Nobody drove because of highways, and they all got drunk after the game, during the game, and they went home by train, and there were no accidents. So what I'm saying is, the private part, we would provide the trains, right? And then we would hook up, and it would be a public-private relationship, and then we all would be responsible, right, for providing a good opportunity for the customer. I'm just thinking out loud. That's all. What do you think, Andreas?
No, I think that the sky's the limit. I would like to see how we get that ride ship up to 1 million or 1.5 million folks. I'm gonna look into it. But Sharmila, chime in and elaborate. What are your thoughts on and then maybe share some of your programs. I'm looking at the time here, and I'm interested in learning from you. What's coming? What are you guys working on? What's next?
Absolutely. No, I'm a big fan of regional rail. There's absolutely no, you would not get anything other than enthusiasm. One of the challenges we see, and I would have to start with challenges there, unfortunately, is governance. I mean, the communities that we go through and the planning process that we are required to do to receive federal funds to be able to come up with a project and start operations require buy-in by all of the communities, buy-in from all of the communities along the corridor. And usually municipal planning organizations play a role so that there are other governmental entities that are involved. So governance is a big factor. But I think there are a lot of discussions now, specifically along the high-speed corridor in certain parts of Texas, as well as the regional rail opportunities between San Antonio and Austin. And we are closely monitoring that and participating in that discussion. The other pieces of the puzzle that we are trying to solve are how do we are undertaking our 2035 transit plan. We are about 5 months into it, and 2035 transit plan is our 10-year long-range plan that identifies taking advantage of that trip patterns model that I talked about, takes into account, gathers public input, create a plan that fits fits the need of the future, and that long-range plan recommendations are going to be implemented in what happens in 3 to 5 years, and what happens, and we figure out what can we do in 10 years. So the plan would have constrained and unconstrained aspects. Constrained would be the projects that we can implement with our existing capital improvement program funds, and unconstrained would be the unfunded elements that we know that we need to have to create a robust system, but there are no current funding opportunities. And those are the ones that we would then evaluate further for that. Our 2 Metro Rapid lines, Expo Line and Pleasant Valley, they have received 60% federal funding and in construction right now, and we are starting initial service next spring. So those would be 2 significant projects that we are receiving federal funding for. So that's a new step for CapMetro in federal small starts grant. Then I think one of the ways we are being a good partner is that we are working with Austin Transit Partnership actively to provide underlying bus network, feeder network that would support the future light rail. I think it's absolutely important to create and think of this rail as part of a network and not as a standalone line. So the 9.8 mile corridor, it's almost 10-mile light rail corridor that Austin Transit Partnership is planning for. CapMetro would provide the underlying bus network to support that, and we'll also be the owner of the system, operator of the system rather. So those are the key aspects. Then we are also thinking small and incremental by providing electric bikes and expanding our Metro bike system to provide the first and last mile solutions as well.
Yeah.
Let me ask another question. Have you included driverless cars in your analysis? I mean, look, I think that maybe in 5 or 10 years, I want to run down to go to the soccer game. I just call up a driverless car from Capital Metro and jump in it, and it'll take me there. Where are you guys on smart cars, driverless cars, integrating with the bus system and the bicycles and etc.?
No, I mean, we are very closely monitoring. My CEO is a member of American Bus Benchmarking Group that is really cutting edge and benchmarking all of the connected and automated bus technologies. So that is one way we are engaged. We have recently done kind of more dedicated benchmarking efforts to that. We're one of the few agencies, maybe one of 2, that have received automated FTA sort of innovation grant, essentially automated yard application to see how sort of automation could help our vehicle maintenance and systems as well. So we are kind of looking at that, but we are very mindful to kind of balance what's coming down the future with what immediately needs to happen on the ground right now.
So I'm curious, Sharmila, how much special purpose planning or transportation comes to you guys? So for example, I could think of Elon Musk coming to you guys and saying, I have 16,000 employees in the Gigafactory, and are you guys servicing them? What can we do? Can we do anything unique? Can we add a new line that goes all the way from downtown Austin to the Gigafactory? Or how does that work? How does the big private sector employers like Dell or anybody, how do they interact with you, or does that happen at all?
No, it happens quite frequently. We haven't had that solicitation from Tesla to connection to Gigafactory. But as you know, as part of Project Connect program of Project, we have a green line, which is going to a Colony Park in Manor. We have kind of taken a look to see what other types of major destinations that it could potentially serve. We own the right of way, and it is part of the Project Connect program of projects. There is no immediate funding in the initial investment sequence of Project Connect. So it is one of those unfunded projects that are slotted for future implementation. But to answer your other question, that what happens when major employers come to us with requests for service, we entertain that all the time. We also have dedicated meetings with them, and we have done that with Samsung and kind of our northern neighbors, if you would, to see how best to support Amazon and Pflugerville. Like in many cases, we have looked at that very honestly to see if there's a true match. Again, as I mentioned, land use and transportation go hand in hand. If your employees are coming from different parts of Central Texas, then providing one line from downtown to your campus may not be your right solution. So we usually start with asking for origin destination information of their employee base to see where is their draw from, where are the employees coming from. And to some extent, that goes also for the airport. We do have a bus route, number 20, that goes straight to the airport, but we also know a lot of the employees that work at the airport. They come from various parts of Central Texas. And as Austin becomes increasingly unaffordable, and I would say if we don't want to use the word unaffordable, say the cost of living is going up consistently. So with that, a lot of our employees and major employers, service employees are living further and further out, which makes the challenge to public transportation, providing meaningful, reliable, frequent public transportation, makes that challenge even harder. So I would say one of the fundamentals that we could correct with this is solid land use policy and transportation. The closer we marry the two, the better outcomes for Austin we would have.
Yeah. So Johnny, real quick before you finish, Sharmila, tell us real quick for you, what's in front of you the next 6 months?
One of our biggest priorities, as I mentioned, is to have Expo and Pleasant Valley Metro Rapid BRT lines in initial service and get them ready for full service, for initial service in sometime spring of 2025 and full service as our small starts grant requirement in 2026. So we are working towards that. We are actively pursuing our going to be in construction soon for our North Demand Response Facility that really supports our pickup, our zone-based demand response that is getting very popular, and we're expanding zones in certain communities like Leander. So our demand for that service is growing, and we are trying to figure out how to kind of meet the demand and supply come together, and also expand and implement our Metro Bike expansion system. And above all, one of my focus areas is to make sure the 2035 transit plan really provides the recommendations that are best for the community, and then we come up with funding solutions for the unconstrained projects.
Got it. Johnny.
I am the solution. We had these discussions about highways and expressways in Texas, and we had private people come in and do tollways. That's what we did. It would have taken us 100 years to do the tollways, waiting on the state and the city. So we had private enterprise. If I were to bring to you a fund of $2 billion, would you let me partner with you to do the things to move people around and help you as we did with the toll roads? Now, let me remind you, we had the interstate system. We had I-35. That was it, going through Austin. There were no toll roads at that time. And it was a private enterprise that came in and said, hey, we're going to do the toll roads. And although you Texans already pay for roads, when you have a gas tax, we're going to charge you to get on the toll road. Is there an analog, Sharmila, in your business model for me to bring you $3 billion and do my own thing in the movement of people? You like that?
soon as I take my unmute myself. So I would say we always welcome private funding as long as it's aligned with our goals and mission. Now,
Okay.
CTRMA, our mobility management partner, we are in very good relationship with them. I would say the question that you pose probably is a little like, this is something that I definitely would like to discuss with my CEO to say, hey, if someone offers you a hypothetical situation like this, almost like a dream, how would you react? It's slightly harder than my pay grade. So I would take that, have a meaningful conversation, and then kind of marry the fiction with the reality and come back to you.
This is what we did in Texas with toll roads. You know that, right? Toll roads is a private public partnership, and is a business. And they said, okay, we can't wait for another I-35 that the state is going to build around. We're going to do a loop, but you're going to have to pay to get on the loop. Now, the reason why we still have 18-wheelers going through Austin is because they don't want to go out and pay the toll roads, right? And get to San Antonio fast. But I think that as we move, this is why I suggested, I do believe for electricity and planning in the city of Austin, it's going to be difficult to keep up with the growth. And I do believe as people move here from northern cities, they expect great public transportation, right? To get them where they go. I know people from New York who can't even drive a car, right? Because they have never seen a tree. They don't know what it is. So I just say this, as I know we need to end here. I think that you are sitting in a very, very interesting place. You're where New York City was in the 1880s. You're where Boston was in the 1900s. And you were where Chicago was in 1918. And they had to figure out a way how to move people through the city. And of course, they had the subway. They had in Chicago, you had the L. I went to Northwestern University, so I did ride the L a lot. And I think that's where we are in the South, not only in Texas, but in other states that were not industrialized. So I'll say that you're in the catbird seat. And how you think about the future would not only enhance our ability to move around the city, but whether or not people will bring companies to Austin, Texas, so that they can get their employees to work. And the fact that we're becoming Manhattan, yes, and it's just a reality. You cannot go against the laws of economics. As things go up, they're going to continue to go up until demand and supply equalizes and houses will go down. But right now, we are living in Manhattan, and it's very, very expensive. So I'll just say congratulations. Think about the future. Think about the world in an interesting kind of way with all kinds of fundings and combinations of fundings. But Texans get things done, whether it's the University of Texas. You said we got a funding problem, but it will get done. So,
Well,
so think about this public-private relationship where, hey, I give you $3 billion and I have people flying around like bumblebees.
Final thoughts, Sharmila.
No, just thank you for your time. It was a very nice afternoon chat, lighthearted and fictional in some ways, but I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Well, thanks for being with us. We look forward to staying in touch. We think that the future of transportation in terms of solutions and business models and new technologies is going to continue to come to Austin. I am hopeful that in many ways, this is my prediction of your challenge. You know, when I was at Austin Energy in the summer of 2003, as I was learning from the planning engineers at the power company, how they did planning, I reminded them that the city of Austin sat in Travis County, which is roughly about the same size of LA County. And at the time, LA County had 6 million people. And so it dawned on me at the moment to make the comment to them that, you know, why aren't we planning for 6 million people in Travis County? and it's going to happen. And so the opportunities are gigantic on how you guys grow and evolve, and obviously the daily challenge is the rules of the game and the funding and all that. But quite an interesting place for you to be at, and so we wish you all the best, and uh, want to stay connected and in touch. So Johnny, take us away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All my bags are packed, ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up and say goodbye, but the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, is blowing his horn. Already I'm so lonesome, I could cry. And I'm on a jet plane, don't know where I'll be back again.
All
Okay,
right, Johnny.
okay. Thank you,
Thank you,
Andrea.
Sharmila. It was a great pleasure to meet you, and we look forward to staying in touch. And
You betcha.
do talk to your CEO and circle back with us. When Johnny says things like he just said, he's not joking around.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bye
Andreas,
now.
travel safe and get some sleep over there. Okay,
Thank
take
you,
care.
my man. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye now.
Bye.